excited to bring up Tamara Grominski, Chief Strategy Officer at Unbounce. Previously, Tamara was at Yellow Pages, FreshBooks, and while at Unbounce, has been promoted into the C-suite. She's going to come up and discuss how you can identify and multiply your best customers. Give her a hand.
Thanks so much. Perfect. Okay. This one?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you so much for the welcome. That was amazing. So great to be back here. I was actually at the first Product Marketing Summit conference in New York 3 years ago this month. So amazing to be back and in person. And I think this was the perfect session to follow the last session. We talked a lot in that last session about the importance of customer segmentation. And now I'm going to chat with you about how you can actually build a segmentation practice as a product marketer. I have built a landing page. If you want access to any of my slides or content or material afterwards, feel free to check out the bit.ly and I'll share it throughout the presentation. Before I get started, I'd love everyone to raise their hand. We'll get a little bit of movement going on. I'm going to ask a question. So if everyone can put their hand up in the air, everyone, please. All right, keep your hand up in the air if you can name your company's best customer segments. Okay, most hands are showing up. This is a room of product marketers, so I would expect that. What if I asked 10 of your colleagues and everyone was in a different department? Keep your hand up if every single person would still give the same answer. Okay, yeah. What if I asked 50 people at your company? Would I get the same answer? Okay, a few of you are doing a really great job at educating. For most people, the hands start to drop at 10, sometimes outside of the product marketing team. We see that very few companies spend enough time on customer segmentation. And the result is that everyone thinks that they're targeting a slightly different customer. And every team thinks they're doing an amazing job, right? And each team is hitting their goals, but they're not moving in the same direction. They're not aligning vectors. And so we get something that looks like this, right? The marketing team's building this amazing piece of collateral for a customer. The product team is building a feature for a slightly different customer. And the sales team is out there pitching something that doesn't even exist. And so really, this is creating a lot of confusion and tension internally. And we also know that customers can feel this pain as well. 71% of customers say that they express frustration when something is not personalized and relevant. We talked about personalization and the importance of it in the last two presentations, right? We also see that 80% of customers say that the experience that a company provides is just as important as its product or service. So you can have a better product than your competitor, but if you're not delivering an experience that feels personalized to them as a customer segment, they might still move on. And when they do choose to move on, 64% of the time when they churn, they're actually churning because of a lack of relevance. Again, not because of the product itself. And so we all know that customer segmentation is important. And so with customer segmentation, we can really focus in on who your best customers are, build momentum and alignment across the org, and then start to deliver products and experiences that will acquire them, engage them, and retain them. And so today I want to walk you through a super tangible practice that you can bring back into your own organization starting today. And it's a 3-step process to being able to build growth-focused segmentation. First, we're going to walk through how you can identify your best customers or your target customer segments. Then we're going to build segment profiles. And then finally, we're going to take those segment profiles and convert them into really high converting go-to-market. So let's start with step 1, identifying your best customers. So identifying your best customers or focusing on customer segmentation could be a subjective exercise, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a bunch of people sitting around a table with personal opinions or biases. We're going to take a really data-backed approach to customer segmentation. And I want to walk you through something called the MAP framework. It's a 3-step process, and it starts with measuring volume. So you want to take a look at your entire customer base, historically and currently. And this could be if you're a SaaS business, your subscriber base, or if you're a physical product business or a one-off purchase product, just anyone that's ever purchased from you. We want to start to identify trends amongst all of those customers and really start to cluster them together. After we understand what those main clusters are, we want to start to analyze the performance of those to see which clusters of customers are driving better business value and which ones are actually performing worse than the average customer. And then finally, we want to look externally to understand if you were to prioritize this customer segment, would you have a chance of winning the market? So we'll deep dive into each of these. And now, because this is not a subjective exercise, it's an objective data-backed one, the most important thing to do is to start with a data sheet, right? So you're probably not going to have the perfect spreadsheet or the perfect data set available for you. And so you're going to want to work with your data team or maybe someone on your team who's a bit more technical who can help you join all of the different data tables that are available. And here you want to understand as much information about the customer as possible. So some businesses, if you're a startup and you've maybe been around for a couple months or you only have 50 customers, you might not have a lot of information. If you've been around for years and you're in more of like a PLG self-serve model and you have hundreds of thousands of customers, you're going to have a wealth of data. What's important is that you're aggregating all of the data that you have on a customer into one place and you're merging it with something that I call account data. And so I've just put up this chart here just to show a couple different types of information that you're looking for in each of these categories. And so we're thinking about things like demographic data, geographic, firmographic, but this account data is really important. And account data is really that unique identifier for each of your customers. This is what's going to allow you to kind of track what's important across all of these different buckets of data. And so again, if you're a SaaS product, this could be their subscription, whether it's the subscription length, what they're paying, the start date or end date if they've churned. And really, this is going to allow you to understand the business value that each of these customer segments are bringing. And so once you have all this information together, honestly, it's as simple as just using like an Excel spreadsheet, pulling some pivots, and starting to do some data exploration. And so I want to give you a little bit of a word of warning because a lot of people will do this exercise, they'll be digging in, and they'll be like, aha, I have a lot of dentists, and that must be our best vertical that we want to focus on. But you can't just turn up the volume, as I say. So your largest group of customers are not always your best customers. And this is why it's really important that we go through the entire process to validate the business performance as well. And so before we move on to that next stage, you want to prepare something that I call like a segment hypothesis. So after you've looked at all of those different trends, you want to come up with what you think could be your best customers. Here, you're probably identifying 3 to 5 different segments that you want to continue to do more research on. Which takes us into the next step, which is validating performance. And so here, we want to take those clusters of customers and we want to start to assess which ones are performing as good as or better than your average customer. And how you do this is going to depend on this type of business that you're at, right? You're going to have different metrics or what better might mean. For me, these are the metrics that are really important in my business. And so when we went through our customer segmentation exercise, we started by looking at conversion rate. Were these segments that we identified more or less likely to convert into paying customers? We also looked at average revenue per user. So were these segments likely to buy a higher package, or were they all in our lowest package? Were we able to expand those customer segments over their life cycle? And how sticky were they? Were they surviving a really long time, or were they churning out right away? And then finally, how valuable were they to our business? So what was the overall lifetime value throughout their whole time with us? And so after you've done this step, you're going to start to see a few trends arise. So let's say you started with 5 different segments in your hypothesis. You're probably going to see 2 or 3 of them are actually performing really well. So you have a lot of them and they're performing better than the average customer. And maybe 1 or 2 of them are actually, just okay. Or surprisingly, they're performing worse than the average customer. And so you're going to continue to refine your hypothesis before you move into the next stage. And so now that we've looked inwardly, we want to face outwardly, and we want to say, if we were to choose to focus on this customer segment, would we be able to win the market? Or what would it take for us to win the market? And there's a couple different ways you can think about this. I kind of slice them these 3 ways. The first one is addressable market. So if you focus on this customer segment, what's the size of the market? And is that market large enough to sustain your growth ambitions, right? And so you want to look at things like total addressable market, but also market penetration. Is there still room in that market for market share to be eaten up? We also want to look at customer acquisition. So both the channels and how scalable those are, as well as the acquisition cost itself. So are there scalable channels that are bringing in these customer segments today? And if you just put more time or resources or money behind it, you'd be able to quickly get in more customers. Or are you going to have to do channel discovery and experimentation as part of your go-to-market? And then finally, competitive landscape. if you are prioritizing these customers, what about your competitors? Are they also prioritizing those customers? Or are they kind of saying, that's not for me? If their answer is that they are prioritizing those customers, that's okay. It doesn't mean you can't go after them. It just means you're going to have a different competitive strategy when you're doing so. And so hopefully by this point, you're starting to refine everything together and really end up with a few segments, hopefully 1 to 3, that you feel really clear on, that you can confirm you're attracting a lot of, and you have a lot of in your customer base, that they have a really great performance, they actually perform better than the average customer, and are markets that will support your growth ambition. And so once we know what your customer segments are, we want to get a better understanding of who they are, like who is the customer behind this kind of description of the segment. And this is where segment profiles come in. And this concept is really important because we talk about the importance of segments, and we talk about why that business performance matters. And here it all goes back to this idea of ratios. And so if out of this you've identified 3 segments and you say, oh, they actually make up about 30% of my customer base, and we know that that 30% is performing better than the 70% of non-segmented customers, what we want to do is we want to crank up that 30%, right? We want to get to that 30% to be 70% of your customer base and start to decrease the non-segmented lower value customers. And in order to do that, we need to really focus on customer value. We need to understand what those customers want, what they find valuable, how your product can deliver that value, and how much they're willing to pay for that value. And so I'm sure every single person in this room has built a buyer persona before. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a segment profile, which is more of like a quantified buyer persona. So it focuses less on things like the job title of your segment or, what their favorite channels are. And it focuses more on this like business value that you're going to use to build your go-to-market. And so I'm going to walk you through how we can start to put this segment profile together. First one is we want to take a look at the jobs to be done, the pains, and the gains of each of your segments. This is a framework from Strategizer's Value Proposition Design. Love it. It's a great segment framework to use. And so we'll start with jobs to be done. When you're going out and you're doing your jobs to be done research, probably via customer interviews, you're going to discover that you might find 3 different types of jobs. You could find functional jobs, social jobs, personal jobs. And a job is really that thing that your customer is hiring your product to do for them. And so if I give an example using Unbounce, Unbounce is a landing page builder. If someone was coming in with a functional job, they might just say, hey, I just want to get a campaign live. All I need to do is publish a landing page. But they might also have a social job. If they're an agency, maybe they really want to build a landing page that will impress their client. That will then get them more business. Or a more personal, emotional job, maybe they want to learn a new skill, and that's actually why they're starting to build a landing page or learn a new piece of technology. You're going to uncover a bunch of different jobs while you're doing this research, and you're going to have to figure out which job is the most important for your customer. And then we have pains and gains. Pains are essentially something that happens when someone's trying to complete their job. So maybe it's going to cost a lot of money for them to get that job completed, or it's going to take a lot of time for them to get that job completed. And your product can help make those pains better. Or we have gains, and these are positive outcomes that will happen as those jobs are completed. Some gains have to be completed in order for them to stick with your product, while others are just kind of nice to have or desirable. And so once you understand the value that your customer segments are looking for, we need to be able to match how your product delivers that value. And this is where feature preference comes in. And so your product probably has a bunch of different functionality, but not every customer segment is going to use it in the same way or want the same things. And so we want to understand what they do want and what they will use. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. So I'm sure we've all seen this as well. You get a survey and it's like, here are my 9 features. Which ones do you prefer? And it's like, rank them from 1 to 9. You're going to get a chart that looks something like this. And I don't know about you, but I cannot tell the difference between how much someone prefers feature 9 and feature 1. And so how you ask the question is sometimes just as important as who you ask. And this is why I always recommend trade-off feature preference, also known as max differential. And here, it's the exact same 9 features, but this time you're going to ask the question a different way. You're going to say, please tell me your most preferred feature and your least preferred feature. So they just have to select 2 things. And you're going to get back a chart that looks like this. So it's the exact same 9 features as the first chart, but we can see that for this customer segment, they highly prefer those first 4 features. And not only do they prefer those and not prefer the bottom, but the bottom 5 features are actually detractor features. They don't want them at all. And by even talking about them or giving them to your customer, you could be taking away from the value rather than adding to the value. And so now that we understand the value that they're looking for and how your product delivers that value, we want to understand for each customer segment how much they're willing to pay for that value. And now again, you could go out and you could ask them, you could say, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, like, how much would you pay for this product? And they're gonna give you a completely lowball answer because everyone wants a deal. And so again, I have a recommendation for you, and this time it's a really simple survey you can do. It's called the Van Westendorp. And the Van Westendorp is a price sensitivity survey that consists of 4 questions. You do not need a data team to do this survey, you can do it all on your own. The first question is, at what price would you consider this product to be so expensive that you would never consider buying it? At what price would it be getting expensive, but you would still buy? At what price would it be a bargain and a great deal? And at what price would it be so cheap that you would actually question the quality of the product? And you're gonna get a chart that looks something like this. And this gray bar here is called the optimal price range. And this is the price that you want to put on your product for each of your customer segments. If you go on the lower end of the gray bar, you're going to probably have a slightly lower ARPU, but a higher conversion rate, higher sales volume. If you go higher end on the price point, you're going to have a higher ARPU, but maybe trade off on lower sales. This is a decision you can make as a business. And now it's important to mention you need to do this for every single customer segment. You can't just do an amalgamation for all 3 of those segments altogether. You want to understand for each of your segments what they're willing to pay. So now you can put all of this information back into your segment profile, and you're starting to have a really great piece of resource that you can share with all of your stakeholders internally to keep everyone focused on the most important things for your segment. But of course, we also need to wrap it up into something that we're going to be able to communicate that value to customers. So this is our messaging and positioning. And again, we really want to focus on segmented value propositions here. You're definitely going to have a high-level value proposition for your product, and we're not asking you to change that, but we're asking you to go really detailed into what the value proposition is for each of your segments. You can use the PMA's messaging and positioning framework if you like. I find it to be a really great one, but it actually doesn't really matter what you're using as long as you're creating something that everyone can align to. And again, the most important thing is we're not just taking all 3 of those segments and amalgamating it here, right? We're building one of these documents for each and every segment. And then we're distributing this and using this as the blueprint for all of our go-to-market. So now that we understand who our best customers are, we know what the value is, how much they're willing to pay for that value, we want to actually convert that into go-to-market that's going to help you acquire more of them and retain them. And so when we think about all of these different customer segments, we think about them taking really unique and personalized journeys. And so I want you to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and actually go on that customer journey from their lens. And as you go through that customer journey, I want you to start to notice whether your experience is personalized, relevant, and positive, or if it's a bit general, a bit generic, and actually a negative experience. And you can start to say, hey, yep, this is an area I need to refine. Oh, this area we're doing a little bit better in. And this is going to give you a starting point to actually start to apply segmentation across the entire customer journey. I'm going to walk you through a couple quick examples of how other brands have applied this before we wrap up. So the first one is Lessonly. I'm a huge fan of Lessonly and their go-to-market. And what they've done here is they've built amazing buying flows across their website in a completely segmented way. So as soon as you come to their website and you go to the main navigation, they clearly call out Lessonly for. Like, it could not be any more simple. And they have the list of their segments. And so if you are one of those segments, you immediately know you're in the right place and you know where to click. And if you happen to click on one of those, you're going to be taken to a page that looks something like this. And so if I was a talent team and I clicked on the talent team in the drop-down, or I was a sales team and I clicked on sales team, I would come to one of these different pages. You can notice that the pages look almost identical, except for the picture, but the value propositions, the language, and the message is completely different. And again, they're selling the exact same product to 2 different customer segments and using different language to do that, because they've taken the time to understand what matters. And if I'm interested in this product and I want to go and do a tour or a demo, again, I can self-select the segment that I'm a part of, and that demo is going to be completely customized for me. And so here I said, hey, I'm a sales team. And as I jump into the demo, you can see that again, they're calling out who I am. So they're making me feel like I am still in the same place. And they're highlighting the pains and gains that I'm looking for. I want to talk a little bit about how we did this at Unbounce. So we went through this exact exercise at Unbounce, and out of that, we came up with 3 core customer segments at the time. And our number one priority was to make sure that when those customer segments landed on our website, they had an immediate sense of belonging. And so we also did what Lessonly did, which is in our dropdown, we just highlighted all 3 of our customer segments. So for us at the time, it was e-commerce businesses, SaaS businesses, and agencies. If you scroll lower down our homepage, we also had a whole section that went into depth on each of these segments. And this again was where we incorporated what I call voice of customer, right? So we spent a lot of time sitting with these customers, understanding how they describe themselves. How would they use their own language to talk about their pains and gains and jobs and how Unbounce could help them. And we incorporated that in a really nuanced way. And then we took it a step further, and we know that our prospects and our customers really come to us for educational content. And so we actually segmented our resource section as well. And so all of our content, we have a bunch of different categories you can search through based on type of content or topic. But if you see in the category list there, we actually put our 3 segments as our top 3 categories, because we wanted to make it abundantly clear to them that they were our priority and that it was super easy for them to find things when they came to our resource section. There's tons of brands who are doing this. These are just a couple examples, so you can start to get creative about how you might apply your segmentation. Just about to wrap up, and I'll take some questions, but before we do, I want to kind of cover what we covered today. First, we looked at mapping your best customers so that you could figure out who you wanted to focus on. Then we took a deeper dive to understand the value that those customers are looking for. And then finally, we applied all of that knowledge, hopefully in a really cross-functional way, everyone building momentum to deliver that high-converting go-to-market. Thank you so much. If you want access to any of the slides or templates, you can go to bit.ly/mapframework. And if you want to know more about customer segmentation, I encourage you to check out the segmentation masterclass that I've built with the Product Marketing Alliance. It's about 4 hours of me talking about this. My name is Tamara Grominski. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Unbounce, and I'm really pleased to be here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Tamara. On for a bit. I think we're going to have some questions for Q&A. That was an amazing session. I almost feel like you're giving away trade secrets. So that link that you had up there, that has everything there?
Not everything, but it has a lot of stuff.
Awesome. Well,
and then everything is in the course. So if you really want everything, then you can take that.
Great. Thanks for doing that. One thing I noticed, you spell go-to-market with a 2.
Yes.
I like that. So I'm going to start doing that.
Well, GTM sometimes could be like Google Tag Manager. And so then I'm like, right? Anyways.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Creating a trend. All right, so let's jump into the Q&A. How do you advocate to make time for a robust segmentation exercise if you're at a high-growth, product-led company and the primary goal is currently acquisition? This is a good one. I feel like so many companies don't actually go through the exercise of segmentation because it's a lot of work.
Totally, yeah. So great question. Segmentation is actually just like fully baked into the product marketing team, so it makes it a lot easier for us moving forward. So I have one person on my team whose job is just like segmentation and pricing and packaging. I kind of think of them as the same thing. But when I started out, especially at Unbounce, and I was building the segmentation practice for us, it was a lot of upfront work because it had not been done. We were a high-growth product-led company, though, and at the time we were focused on acquisition. So I think it is a good blend because when you think about segmentation, if you want to think about how you can get people to buy into it, think about it more than just like your customer base. And that's why I was talking a little bit about building that data set that kind of spans the broadest route, right? So if you look, hey, we want to take any information we have about anyone, like even if they just signed up for a trial, then that actually is going to funnel into your acquisition strategy and help you way more than if you didn't have customer segmentation. And like the process I walked through today is a pretty scrappy process. You could do it easily in 1 quarter or less with just you and one other person, right? You can layer in more in-depth segmentation as you go, but it's not meant to be this like large multi-quarter project. So hopefully you can start to get some learnings out of it really quick, and then people will feel bought in, and you can keep to investing and maybe even get a whole role.
And just get started.
Exactly, get started.
All right, so This is a good one. How do you distinguish between segment profiles and personas? Can you create a segmentation based upon different persona profiles? I feel like there's confusion oftentimes around ICP versus personas. I've noticed it myself.
Yeah. I think of personas as like a type of person, obviously. And often when you see a persona, it's like they have a name, they have a job title, they have like a channel that they can be reached on, they have these personal preferences, and it's like a fictionalization of a segment. Whereas I think the point I'm trying to get across with this idea of segment or customer segmentation is that it's actually about a broader market, and every person in that market is unique, right? And so I think personas actually do us an injustice because they assume that everyone in a market or a segment is the same and can fit into this one little page. And I disagree with that. And so I actually stay away from building personas entirely. I think there's a time and a place for them, but as a business practice, I don't focus on them. And I just do segments, and I think about what does this segment have in common, and then how do we build go-to-market that is highly relevant to them so that we're actually delivering like a one-to-one experience at scale.
Wow, hot take, no personas. I like that.
Personas are dead.
All right, so another one that I've come up against personally. How do you segment effectively when you don't have the right account data? This is, I feel like, a challenge for everyone. Also, data freshness, whether it's accurate. Company makes acquisitions, it's sitting in different places. So yeah, how do you handle that?
One of the things I hear the most is like, well, I have too much data, or I don't have enough data, so I can't get started. That's what I tried to point out earlier. Like, just start with the data you have that you trust. If that's only 4 data points, that's okay. You can find other ways to layer in data. And so in the past, when I haven't had a lot of data, I've actually augmented with like Clearbit to just fill in the gaps of things I didn't know. So I didn't have a lot of like industry data or vertical data when I first started doing my segmentation. And so Clearbit was able to fill in all of that for me. And then I went back and I said, well, now I know this is an important piece of information I need to collect, so I'm gonna add it to the sign-up survey. So now every net new customer that comes in, I will be able to collect their industry. And so if you don't get started with the information you have, you won't be able to identify the information you're missing. So that's the first thing. And I would say, yeah, like from a fidelity perspective or quality, like just include the data that you trust and exclude the data that you don't. And it's better to have less but more high quality than more that you don't trust.
Great. All right, we have time for one more. There's been a swap here on the bottom a couple of times. So let's see. Can you share more about this data team? Who are they? How do I convince the boss to hire them?
Okay, great. So we have a data team at Unbounce. It's really just a team that works to do our business health metrics, but also when we're going to market, help us build like our dashboards in Tableau or do data exploration. However, I would say the best thing I've ever done on any product marketing team I've built is hire a data-focused product marketing team. And so I actually do like a really data-heavy case study when I hire for my team, where I give them like a raw Excel sheet. And that's the case study to be a product marketer, because my expectation is that everyone is data focused. And so build your own data team on your product marketing team. That's the best advice I can actually offer.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Tamara.
Thanks so much.
All right. So we're hitting coffee break time. So I guess a couple logistical things. Be back.